Ballerina from the world of John Wick is the latest film from, you guessed it, the world of John Wick. This one is not directed by Chad Stahelski. Wink. It's directed by Len Wiseman. This one is taking place in between John Wick 3 and 4, exploring the Ruscaroma. You know, when John Wick gets his ticket punched in that one to, you know, get out of New York City, you know, he goes to the Angelica Houston run Ballerina place, where they're probably deadly assassins. And in this film, we explore the character of Eve, played by Ana de Armas, who found her way with the Ruscaroma after some very, you know, tragic events that happened to her as a child. She's basically grown up with them. This is all she's known for a very long time. And now that she is an adult, she may have ruffled some feathers, she's getting into some stuff, and she's exploring some of the reason why those traumatic events happened to her long ago, and she wants revenge, believe it or not. So I didn't know this. This script was acquired from the writer Shay Hatton. It was on the blacklist of, you know, the most liked unproduced screenplays back in 2017, and they acquired it back then, and he had said he was inspired to write that after specifically watching the trailer for John Wick 2, which is interesting, but it then explained to me, like, oh yeah, this is why this guy just kind of appeared out of nowhere when he had a writing credit on John Wick Parabellum, you know, and ever since that movie, you know, he's been involved with John Wick 4 and Day Shift for Netflix, Zack Snyder's Army of the Dead franchise, Zack Snyder's Rebel Moon franchise. But hey, John Wick, you know what I mean? Like, back then, I remember being like, who is this guy? Like, he has no other credit, and it's like, oh, now I get it, because he wrote the script that they acquired after they had made John Wick 2, so perfect, it lines up, it's a shoo-in. I was very, like, excited to, like, finally learn that bit of lore recently, but they had acquired the script for this movie back then, and although they said it was inspired by, you know, him watching the trailer for John Wick 2, I don't know if it was ever explicitly tied in, and I feel like they had to do some rewrites in order to get the specific tie-ins back into it. So it took a while to get into production, and once they did, you know, they completed it, and then they had to go back to do some reshoots. And there's a bit of, like, you know, a controversy surrounding that. You have some people that are saying, like, you know, reshoots happen for every movie, which is true. You know, you just find out some things that are apparent only when you've, you know, got some pre-existing footage and you're trying to line it up together. And, you know, they usually save some money in the budget to potentially go back to do some reshoots, so that's not entirely new. However, there was a bit of chatter that was like, you know, Chad Stahelski actually, you know, did not let Len Wiseman on the set. You know, he basically reshot almost all of the movie. It's basically just another Chad Stahelski movie, which they have, I think, even refuted. Like, no, Len Wiseman was there. You know, Chad Stahelski was just helping out. He's a producer. The thing about Len Wiseman is, like, as a director, I'm not totally against him. Like, I think the first Underworld is whatever. I enjoyed Underworld Evolution from memory. I think Live Free or Die Hard is not too bad. And, you know, Total Recall I saw as like a kid before I even saw the Arnold one. I thought it was fine then. I haven't really rewatched it since then, so that opinion could change. He hasn't directed a feature since Total Recall, though. So I wasn't, like, against him, like, coming back and doing a movie, especially, like, a John Wick movie, but I think there was, like, a lack of enthusiasm, especially after, like, 4 came out, and it was, like, Chad Stahelski just firing on all cylinders, like, man, they've really leveled up their skill level, and then it's like, oh, well, the next installment of this franchise, the first theatrical spin-off, is Len Wiseman, who's done some movies that got a little mixed reception. So I can kind of see why some people would be skeptical and would be easy to, like, buy into the, you know, Chad Stahelski had to, like, save the movie narrative. We don't really know unless we were there, and, you know, they're always gonna play coy about certain things. At the end of the day, though, all that really matters is how is the film, you know? And I feel like there is a lot of great action sequences in this movie. You know, some sequences that definitely feel like, okay, yeah, this is the John Wick stuff that I like this, like, kind of slow building of, like, these, like almost like comical action scenarios. You know, I know a lot of people are, like, talking about the flamethrower stuff, and that goes on a lot longer than I thought it would. When I saw it being promoted. And yeah, it's fucking excellent how much they're able to get out of that, you know? And it just builds and builds and builds to a really satisfying end. But there's also a moment involving, like, grenades that Ana de Armas' Eve is utilizing in a fight that's a little, I wouldn't say close quarters, but yeah, there's, like, narrow hallways and rooms to duck into, and she's, like, blowing holes in one side and then ducking over there, blowing another hole, but walking through the other one to get around. It's really fun, creative stuff like that is what makes the John Wick stuff, especially as they go on, just really engaging, really intense, and just really really entertaining, and they maintain that for the most part. There are definitely a few action sequences, and I wouldn't even say they're bad necessarily, but they are like shot and cut in a different way than what I'm used to with the John Wick movies, where I'm like, I don't know if this is true. I have no proof to say if this is true or not, because it's not like I have a list of like, here's specifically what they added and reshot whatever, but if I was to believe the narrative, I think this is Len Wiseman solely. Like, this is from the original shoot or whatever. But I wouldn't say they're bad. It's just a little different. It's not necessarily like 100% seamless, I guess you would say. But like I said, I wouldn't even say that those moments are bad even. And, you know, there's just too many stellar action moments, you know, to completely, you know, let these other ones sink it. And I really like how they built up Eve's character, like exploring her, like kind of training with the Ruska Roma, what they're kind of all about, how they like give her this mentality of like, here's how you can actually beat opponents. And I really like seeing the shaping of like a figure, like a John Wick-esque figure who can go into a room and clear it, you know? I love the mystery of a John Wick, where it's just like, oh, he's the best, where people hear his name and they're like, oh, fuck, you know? And then you just see him in action. But I do like seeing, for a different character at least, just seeing that kind of being built up. And Ana de Armas, she's been great in a few movies. Obviously, Knives Out is the easy go-to. That was like her big kind of like star-making turn, you know? Like, no, do not ignore this actress. And she had a small appearance in No Time to Die, where I would say, like, yeah, that was when people were talking about, could you do spin-offs with this? And I was like, you could probably do something with Ana de Armas. Maybe it doesn't have to be tied to this, but you could, you know, give her more action stuff, more leading role stuff. Ghosted was a bit of a misstep, but besides that, you know, like, I think this is like, okay, we're in a better direction as far as like utilizing her talents and her willingness to go all in with like the action sequences, the stunt work, just really promoting that. And I think she really does make a compelling action lead. I do like Eve as a character. You know, this is definitely a character that I would like to see more of if they were to go back to it. I think they have a really great idea for that character. And I think, you know, there's a really solid journey in there. Is it hampered down by some narrative things? Yeah, here's the thing. It's like the action stuff, like some of the filmmaking stuff, I did notice like there's a couple like technical like stitching of things, maybe like some de-aging where I was like, is that what's up with the fucking lip? You know what I mean? But I feel like I noticed some smaller technical stuff with the other John Wick movies. Like that wasn't like too jarring for me in this instance, you know what I mean? So I don't think a lot of my issues have to do with like the filmmaking stuff, which I'm sure some people might expect, considering the huge talk of the town was reshoots. What can you tell? Did Chad Stahelski? I don't think it's like on a technical level. However, on like a script writing level, I would not say that this is a 100% like smooth, very tight script. And maybe it used to be when they originally acquired it, my theory being at this point, it had, you know, no John Wick characters in it, and maybe they're just creating their own thing at that point. And obviously, I don't mind Ian McShane being back. He's great as Winston, and Sharon, it's great to see Lance Reddick one more time as this character too. And Angelica Houston, seeing a bit more of her, you know, running the Ruska Roma. I have no problem with those things because I feel like they worked them in a way that felt natural. It didn't like stop the story. And even a brief meeting after that scene in John Wick 3 where she meets up with Keanu Reeves, you know, that's not too bad. It's just a fun little cameo. The fact that, like, Keanu Reeves does seem to be just inserted into the third act for no good reason is kind of like, like, that did kind of bug me, only because, not because I hate that character or anything. It's always a joy to see Keanu Reeves fuck some dudes up, right? And then see him in action. It's always a joy, and I just love his just direct kind of deadpan delivery as that character. But he always has like that face where it's like it's almost like he wants to convey like, don't make me do this, please. You know what I mean? Like, you can walk away, you know, that kind of like, can't you see like what I don't want to do but I know I can and have to do kind of thing. But I feel like overall, like, character wise, it's not like any of the events here I can necessarily go back to like 4 and be like, oh, so maybe this, you know what I mean? It's not like anything like that. Or I can't say that that character's addition helps Eve that much. It definitely just feels like, you know, it's from the world of John Wick and they want to maybe play it a little bit safe. Like, if he's not in it, you know, will people care? We could use this as a marketing thing. They saw that opportunity there. I just don't think it works overall, especially because there's a bit of a reveal regarding another character that's kind of been popping up, and they do a reveal where I'm like, okay, let's see where they go with this. And they start to do something, and then it ends. And I was like, oh, well, that was a bit of a waste, wasn't it? And that impact I just didn't really feel, throughout the rest of the movie at that point. And I was like, man, that could have been it. Like, as far as, like, you got to do the world-building stuff, whatever, but as far as, like, selling your self-contained story, I mean, you could have had something right here. I think there's a couple lines, whether ADR'd or reshot or whatever, where it's like, yeah, this feels very unnatural. Like, it feels like they had something and then they cut to something else where they're like, well, ignore that. We got to put Keanu Reeves in it, just to kind of, like, tie it all together. I think the villainous cult stuff, and Gabriel Byrne, great actor, and there's a performance by him where I'm like, I can see, like, he's a creep. I can kind of see where we could have, like, a really good, revenge thing where we're like, fuck yeah, get him. I just think the cult stuff with him, his character, it's just a little too vague overall, and I'm not trying to say, like, I need everything spelled out for me. I need to be spoon-fed everything like a fucking dummy, I've complained about that many a times before. You gotta trust your audience. But as far as, like, feeling the weight of their, like, involvement in the Wick world and the potential feud with the Ruscaroma, pre-existing feud with Eve's own organization that she's, been born into practically, it didn't really ring true to me. It was just kind of like, I don't really know what they're all about or what they, like, do in this world other than fuck shit up. And there's one scene in particular where, like, it feels like action just kind of happens. And I have never really felt this way about any of the other Wick movies where I'm like, why is this action scene happening? Like, I never really questioned the logistics. I maybe have questioned, like, is anyone, like, seeing this? Like, would people really not notice it that much? I've questioned that kind of stuff, but never once have I ever, like, questioned in a John Wick movie, like, why is this an action scene? Like, why is this starting? And when that happened, I was like, okay, this might have some script writing issues for sure, because it happens, like, maybe midway point through the movie. There's also, like, another string of events, like, that happened very quickly where I was like, I don't understand why they've set the stage like this, like, why they thought we wouldn't want to see a particular thing, or why a character hesitates at a particular moment for no real good reason. You know what I mean? It would seem no real good reason. So there are a couple parts like that where I was like, man, just like, yeah, narratively, it's just not really coming together in the way that I'd want. I'd love to be invested in taking down the villains, but I don't really know a lot about who they are other than they're a little creepy. It's like, well, give me more, I need to, when it comes to revenge stories, I need to fucking feel it, and it's like, they give you some boilerplate kind of stuff, and because of Ana de Armas, she carries at least the weight of the character, she sells the emotion of Eve, but as far as, like, the setting of the world and the weight of their impact on it, yeah, I didn't really feel that ultimately, especially since, Gabriel Byrne, offering a solid performance. I would say also character-wise is just kind of flat, generic, not much else to it other than, like I said, just some boilerplate traits. And there's also a character played by Norman Reedus, Walking Dead's own, and at first I was like, okay, let's see where this goes, but then the way they kind of, like, closed off that story thread, like they, drop it for a long time, and then they show a quick scene near the end where it's like, okay, here we are. It's like, man, like, they really promoted that this guy is in it, he's a big name on The Walking Dead. I feel like a lot of people have wanted him to kind of break out into more motion pictures for a long time because of The Walking Dead. I've definitely seen fan casts of, like, make him Ghost Rider or some shit, and I would be bummed if you were a fan of his going in and seeing, like, oh, he's got, like, a longer, like, action sequence, and then he's kind of out of it for a very long time until the end. I think I'd be disappointed if you were a fan. But even, like, narratively, like, for me, I'm just like, why would, I can't spoil it, but, like, why would, certain characters leave it like this, or why would we not see how they got to where they, you know what I mean? Like, how did they do that? Once again, it's hard to say without spoiling it specifically, but I did not think this was as tightly written as it could have been. So despite the fact that it has a lot of the elements that make a Wick movie very entertaining, these fantastic action set pieces, is a really great lead and some interesting story potential, building of the world that I always find interesting. The John Wick world is very fascinating to me. Some good little moments of humor, and even the musical score, which was originally going to be Marco Beltrami, but then they replaced him with Tyler Bates, the guy guy who's been doing it, which is like, well, yeah, I guess that makes sense. If you got him, why not use him? This is not a disaster of a movie. I do not want to paint the picture of that. You know, I'm sure a lot of people might be ready to say that, or we're waiting for that to be kind of the critical consensus. From what I understand, a lot of people are enjoying this, and that's great, you know, and I can see why, because, like I said, it has a lot of the same elements that make the Wick movies good, and man, just those action pieces are really great. But yeah, I can't really get past some of the narrative shortcomings that this has. And even though this is a newer franchise, it's obviously not immune to doing some pandering that some of these other franchises have been doing with returning characters. In this sense, it's Keanu Reeves coming back to just kind of be there. And look, it's like, there's worse things to have Keanu Reeves for, right? But once again, like, if we're speaking just narrative, like, thematically, I can't really see much of, like, a big impact each character made on each other at the end of the day. So I just can't get past those things overall. I'm gonna give Ballerina from the world of John Wick a C+. Like I said, not a disaster, totally just entertain. Like, you could watch this and not, like, totally hate yourself. Like, I didn't even do, like, I didn't walk out going like, man, or like, oh, I'm so conflicted, I don't know what to think. I kind of walked out just like, no, it passed the time, you know, like, I enjoyed, like, some of the things they had, you know, like, you know, I think definitely a little disappointed just based off of, I really wanted this to work from the marketing material that they were showing. But, you know, I don't think this is like a franchise ruiner or anything like that, you know, and a lot of people have been enjoying it. And if they do decide to bring back Eve based on if her popularity really soars, then yeah, I would love to see that. I will take Eve coming back over fucking John Wick 5 where Keanu Reeves isn't dead. I don't know why the fuck are they doing that? You have a great ending with John Wick 4, and they're just like, fuck it, we made too much money. Whatever. But if you've seen Ballerina from the world of John Wick, leave your thoughts in the comments below what you thought of it. And as always, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe. I'm Jackson Fulcher. See you guys next time.